I was chewing dry turkey when my fork stopped halfway to my mouth, and I swear, for a moment, it felt like the whole dining room paused with me. Just froze. One sentence. That's all it took. Her words weren't screamed. They weren't whispered. They were said like a casual observation, like someone commenting on the weather. But they sliced through me like glass. Let me back up. Not to the beginning of our relationship, because frankly, I don't care to rehash how we met, or how I thought she was different, or how I used to be the guy who thought love could fix anything. This isn't a love story. It's a warning. We were halfway through dinner at her parents' house, a monthly tradition I learned to dread. Her dad, Harris, always asked me if I had found a real job yet, even though I've worked in systems compliance for 12 years. Her sister, Fern, talked over me like I wasn't there. And Marla, my wife, or whatever you want to call her now, she sat next to me, close enough for her perfume to hit me in waves, but emotionally 1,000 miles away. I knew something was off before the bread hit the table. She hadn't spoken to me in the car. She hadn't introduced me when we walked in. And she'd barely touched her wine, which, if you knew Marla, was practically a red flag on fire. But I didn't expect what came next. They were talking about relationships. Her sister had just gotten engaged for the second time. Everyone was fawning over the ring, clinking glasses, telling stories. And then Fern, because of course it was Fern, looked at me and said, "Lowell, what's the most romantic thing you've ever done for Marla?" I smiled nervously, shrugged. I surprised her with a weekend cabin for our anniversary. Last year. Fern made a face. That's it. Her dad chuckled under his breath. And Marla? She didn't even look at me. She just smiled and said, "Lowell's idea of romance is not ruining the Wi-Fi connection." Everyone laughed. But I didn't. Because that wasn't the part that hurt. What came after was, her mom smiled at her and said, "You've always liked safe men, sweetheart." And Marla, without hesitation, replied, "Yes, safe, predictable, temporary." The room went silent. My ears rang. And in that moment, with a half-eaten roll on my plate and cranberry sauce on my shirt, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just being cruel. She was preparing the stage for something. Testing the waters. Looking me in the eye to see if I'd flinch. I didn't flinch. I stood up. I took my jacket off the back of the chair. And I walked out. No speech. No scene. Just silence. The kind that says everything. But the story doesn't end there. It wasn't just an insult. It wasn't just a joke at my expense. It was a confession in disguise. And the truth I uncovered 2 days later changed everything. The thing about walking out is that you always think there's going to be a dramatic moment right after. A phone call, a chase, some kind of confrontation. But there was nothing. Just cold air, quiet streets, and the sound of my own footsteps echoing down her parents' perfect brick driveway. I waited for her to call. I even held my phone in my hand the whole ride home. But the screen stayed black. No call. No text. Nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I just laid on the couch staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a slow countdown. My brain wouldn't stop replaying her voice. Safe. Predictable. Temporary. She said it like she was reading my expiration date out loud. I kept wondering how long she'd felt that way. How long had I been just furniture? Around 4 a.m. I got up and made coffee I didn't drink. I opened my laptop. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to feel like I still had some piece of my life I could control. But when I sat down and saw the list of connected devices on our home network, I noticed something strange. A device I didn't recognize, a phone labeled M5_68. Not mine, not hers. And it had been connected off and on for the past 3 weeks. Curious, I clicked through the admin panel. There it was again, active during certain nights. Always when she said she was working late or staying at her co-working loft downtown. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe desperation, maybe instinct. But I changed the Wi-Fi password right then. I figured if someone was using our internet behind my back, I'd cut the cord and see what happened. The reaction came fast. That evening, Marla came home earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen pretending to eat. She walked in, tossed her bag down, and the first words out of her mouth were, "Did the Wi-Fi go down?" I shrugged, changed the password. Too many random devices popping up. She froze. Just for a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I did. Her hand tightened around the fridge door. Then she smiled. Too wide. Ugh. Yeah, probably just the neighbors leaching. You know how these old buildings are. I nodded slowly. Didn't say a word. That night, she slept facing the wall. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I waited until she left for her early Pilates class. Then I grabbed her laptop, the one she thought I never touched, and I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her email. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I wasn't even sure I wanted to find something. But what I did find felt like being punched in the chest. There was an email thread titled Marriott_Enford_weekend. And it wasn't with a coworker. It was with someone saved as L.D. Just initials. No full name. No photo. The thread started 2 months ago. Hotel confirmations. Notes like, room 327 again, and same wine, and can't wait to see you without that ring. There were receipts. Attachments. One was a selfie, low lighting, hotel sheets, her shoulder exposed, and a necklace I bought her 2 anniversaries ago. My stomach turned. I stared at the screen, willing it to be fake, a scam, a misunderstanding. But it was all her. Her email. Her words. Her weekend lies. And just like that, everything made sense. The Wi-Fi ghost device, the cold stares, the insult at dinner. That wasn't a joke. That was a farewell speech dressed in sarcasm. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up, walked to our closet, pulled down the small lockbox where I kept our marriage license, old photos, and the backup hard drive with all our vacation memories. I took it all, shoved it in a duffel bag. Then I picked up my phone and started typing a message. Not to her. To LD. Because I figured if she wasn't going to tell me who he was, I'd find out myself. And what I uncovered when I hit send, that's when the real betrayal began. I didn't expect him to answer. Honestly, when I typed that message, I know who you are. We need to talk. I thought it would disappear into the void, or maybe bounce back with an error. But 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a reply so casual it made my skin crawl. Meet where she met me. 2 p.m. You'll understand more than you want to. No name. No punctuation beyond that one period at the end. Just confidence. Like he already knew I'd show up. And the worst part? He was right. I drove to the address he sent. An old beige building on the edge of town. The kind that looks abandoned until you notice the expensive cars parked out back. No sign on the door. Just a keypad and a camera above it. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to turn around. But then the lock clicked on its own and the door swung open like someone was waiting. Inside, the place wasn't what I expected. Not a hotel. Not a bar. It looked more like a clinic lobby. White walls, soft lighting, modern furniture. A woman at the desk barely looked up before saying, "Are you Lowell?" And when I nodded, she simply said, "Follow the hall." I'd barely taken 3 steps when a man appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall, sharp suit, expensive shoes, the kind of guy who looks like he smells of confidence and imported cologne. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just said, "So you're the husband." My throat tightened. "And you're L.D.?" "Lyle," he corrected. "Lyle Dorn." The name didn't ring a bell, but something about the way he said it made me uneasy, like I should have recognized it. He gestured to a small room off the hallway, and we stepped inside. There was a single desk, 2 chairs, nothing else. Too clean. Too intentional. He sat. I didn't. "Where is she?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He leaned back like he had all the time in the world. Probably at work. Or pretending to be. Then he looked me over with this expression of bored pity. "You really didn't know, did you?" I hated how fast I shook my head. He exhaled through his nose. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sigh. "I'm not proud of it. But I'm not apologizing either." My pulse kicked hard. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, folding his hands calmly, "that your wife didn't come here for romance. Or passion. She came here for something she felt you couldn't give her." He paused just long enough for my stomach to drop. Validation. Excitement. Someone who didn't blend into the wallpaper. I winced. "So this is a what? A relationship clinic? Some kind of therapy center?" He actually laughed at that. "No, nothing that innocent." Then, like he was discussing the weather, he said, "This is an executive matchmaking facility. Discreet. Private. For clients who want companionship without the inconvenience of divorce." My mouth went dry. "She hired you?" "Not exactly." He tapped the desk. "She was matched." Matched. Like she'd filled out a form. Like I was a placeholder waiting to be replaced once the algorithm found someone better. I felt something crack inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, Just a quiet internal snap that told me life as I knew it was done. But before I could even process that, Lal slid a small white envelope across the desk toward me. My name was written on it in her handwriting. She asked that this be given to you when things became too obvious to hide, he said. Looks like dinner did the job. I stared at the envelope. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It felt radioactive, like whatever was inside would burn straight through my hands. But I took it anyway. And when I opened it later, when I finally read what she wrote, that's when I realized the dinner insult wasn't an accident or a slip or a moment of cruelty. It was the beginning of her exit strategy, and I wasn't supposed to survive it intact. I must have stared at that envelope for a full hour before I had the courage to open it. It wasn't sealed with a kiss or perfumed like some romantic movie cliché. No, it was cold, flat, folded with precision, like something drafted by an HR department. And the paper inside, just a single sheet. No, dear Lowell. No greeting, just words. And not even that many. You were the safest place I ever had, but I outgrew safety. I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to fade quietly. You were never supposed to notice. Please don't chase ghosts. There's nothing left to salvage. Marla. I read it once. Then again. And then I sat back and realized I was shaking. Not from anger. From emptiness. Like my body had finally caught up to the truth and didn't know what to do now that the fight was over. That sentence, you were never supposed to notice, played on loop in my head. She hadn't just planned to leave. She planned to disappear while still standing right in front of me. I kept trying to make sense of it. We had a home, a dog, shared Spotify playlists, inside jokes about the neighbor who dressed like a pirate. We had 6 years of marriage. How do you outgrow a life like that and call it quiet fading? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she'd been testing the limits for a while. That dinner line wasn't the first slap. It was just the loudest one. Her late nights, her silence, her passive digs at my predictability, the way she suddenly needed space during weekends, all of it had been trial balloons. Seeing what she could say, what she could do, how far she could go before I finally noticed the string had snapped. And now here I was, holding a breakup note disguised as closure. I didn't cry. I wish I could say I did, but I was too stunned for that. Instead, I went home, walked into our bedroom, and just stood there staring at her side of the closet. Her shoes were lined up perfectly. Her gym bag still had a half-finished water bottle inside, like she'd be back any minute. Except she wasn't coming back. And if she did, it wouldn't be for me. It'd be for her charger or her sunglasses, or to grab the dog when she thought I wouldn't be home. So I did something I never thought I'd have the spine to do. I opened the closet, grabbed an empty suitcase, and began packing her life into it. Not with fury, but with numbness. Folded her sweaters. Stuffed her makeup bag. Every item I touched felt like peeling away a version of myself that believed in forever. Then I found the small notebook. It was hidden in the drawer under her scarves, tucked between travel receipts and an old Valentine's Day card I had written her. I almost missed it. The notebook was red leather, zipped shut. I opened it. Inside were lists. Names, dates, cities, and one name, Lyle Dorn, underlined twice. That's when I realized her affair wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't romantic. It was strategic. She'd planned her replacement for me like a job interview. And what she was really doing all those late nights wasn't just cheating, it was auditioning. That was the moment I stopped being confused. That was the moment I wanted revenge. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor with that red notebook open in front of me, flipping through pages like I was decoding a secret language. Names, initials, symbols, crossed out weekends, highlighted cities. Some entries had stars next to them. Some were circled. And then there was LD, finalized. I don't even know why that word, finalized, made my stomach flip harder than the rest, but it did. It wasn't passion. It wasn't love. It was a transaction. A process. Like I'd been phased out in a corporate restructure. By sunrise, my shock had turned into something else. Not rage. Not revenge exactly. More like a cold, bitter clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to send her texts she'd pretend not to read. But I also wasn't going to let her walk away thinking she'd outsmarted me. If she wanted to exit quietly, I was going to make her wish she'd never underestimated what predictable could really do. I started with the bank accounts. She had no idea I'd set up alerts on our shared finances 3 years ago after she accidentally overdrew $900 buying designer boots during what was supposed to be our budget month. At the time, she promised it was a one-time slip. She said, "Remind me next time. Babe, I forget sometimes we're not rich." I should have seen it for what it was, not a joke, but a warning. She forgot we weren't rich because she was already planning a life where she wouldn't need to remember me at all. But now, that alert system was my first weapon. I logged in and watched as her personal expenses hit the shared card. Spas, flights, car rentals, even a boutique hotel I'd never stayed in. I screen captured everything, made a folder, labeled it The Real Marla. Then came the message. I texted her mom. Not Marla, her mom. Judith had always seen me as weak, soft, background noise in their loud family of big personalities and bolder opinions. But she also cared deeply, maybe too deeply, about appearances. And I knew one thing for certain. Judith would rather set herself on fire than have her daughter's affair become public knowledge, especially after that "our family doesn't do divorce" rant she gave at Thanksgiving last year. So I crafted the message carefully. Polite. Detached. Just enough ice to make her nervous. "Hi, Judith. Hope you're well. Just a heads up that Marla left some personal documents in my possession. I'd appreciate it if she could arrange to collect her things soon. I'll be at the house this weekend. Let me know what works best." No accusation. No drama. But I knew what would happen next. 10 minutes later, Marla called. First time in 3 days. I didn't answer. She texted, "What did you send my mom?" I waited 10 minutes. Then replied, "Just letting her know you left pieces of your double life behind. Read." No response. Then she called again. And again. Then a third message came through. "You don't want to do this." I just stared at the screen and whispered, "You already did." But I wasn't finished. If she thought she'd buried all her lies neatly behind hotel room doors and selective silence, she was about to find out that even the safest exit strategy leaves footprints. And I had just started following them. I wasn't planning on dragging anyone else into this. I really wasn't. But the thing about secrets is that they don't stay buried if someone accidentally steps in the dirt. And in Marla's case, the next person to step directly into the mess she made was her best friend, Callie. Callie and I were never close. She always treated me like I was temporary. The way someone talks to their friend's college boyfriend they assume won't last the semester. But I never disliked her. She just tolerated me. Probably because Marla told her to. But Callie was loyal. Not to me, but to the idea of their friendship. And that's what made her the perfect pressure point. I waited until Saturday morning, when I knew Marla would be distracted. Her calendar had a weekly sound bath and herbal reset, things she liked to post about, but never explain. I drove across town and parked outside Callie's apartment. My hands were sweaty. My heartbeat wouldn't calm down. But I had the notebook in my passenger seat and a printed copy of one specific page, the one with Lal Dorn, finalized and a checkmark beside the date they met. I rang the buzzer. She opened the door in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, squinting like she hadn't had coffee yet. "Lowell." I held up the paper. "I'm not here to fight. I just want to know if you recognize this name." She blinked, took the page, read it once, then looked back at me with something I wasn't expecting, guilt. "Oh no," she muttered. So I pushed. "You know him?" She hesitated. "Not directly. I mean, not by that name. But Marla's mentioned a guy, casually, like she was joking, called Dorney or something. I thought it was just some app flirt. I didn't know. Did she tell you she was cheating?" Her face twisted. She never said it like that. Just that she was meeting people, that she needed to feel like herself again. I told her she was pushing too far, but she said I wouldn't notice. Callie went quiet. The kind of quiet where both people realize they've been used. Played. Lied to in different ways, but lied to all the same. I handed her the rest of the printed pages, the hotel bookings, the emails, the receipts. She sat down on her stoop, right there on the cold concrete, scanning them with shaking hands. "She told me you were distant," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, because I wasn't Lyle. Callie didn't defend her. She didn't even try. And that's when I realized she hadn't known the full story, not even close. Marla hadn't just betrayed me. She'd manipulated her inner circle too. Carefully. Selectively. Keeping everyone just informed enough to side with her, but not enough to see the whole picture. But that picture was clear now. And Callie, for the first time, seemed to realize she'd been holding the brush while Marla painted me as the villain. I need a favor, I said finally. She looked up. What kind of favor? I want you to invite her over. Casual. Like nothing's wrong. Say you want to talk. Maybe do drinks. Whatever. Just get her here. Callie stared at me. You're planning something. Yes, I said. But I'm not doing anything illegal. Or cruel. I just want her to sit across from someone who knows everything. I want her to feel that shift when the room stops protecting her. Callie hesitated, then nodded slowly. Text me when she's on her way, I said, turning back toward my car. And Callie, thank you for not pretending anymore. As I drove off, I looked at her through the mirror, still sitting there with the evidence in her lap. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt like I wasn't the only one finally seeing Marla clearly. And what happened the next day, when Marla walked into that apartment thinking it was just another casual catch-up, was the beginning of her unraveling. The plan wasn't perfect. I didn't expect it to be. I wasn't a mastermind, just a guy who'd been humiliated so deeply he forgot how to sit still. I waited outside Callie's building in my car, parked 2 blocks away where I could see the entrance but wouldn't be seen myself. Every second felt like a slow drip of acid in my chest. Part of me still hoped Marla wouldn't show. That maybe she'd cancel. That maybe she'd finally sense that something wasn't right. But no. At 3:12 p.m, there she was. Same tan trench coat. Same swinging walk. Same phone in her hand that she always clutched like a lifeline. I could almost imagine what she was texting. Probably some cutesy lie-to-lile about needing girl time or her self-care rituals. Watching her move like nothing mattered, like she hadn't left my life in ruins, did something sharp to my brain. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until they hurt. 15 minutes passed. I got the signal. 1 word from Callie. Now? I walked toward the building with a quiet, shaking resolve. My legs didn't feel like my own. When I got to the door, Callie buzzed me up. She didn't say anything when I entered, just nodded toward the living room, where Marla sat on the couch, sipping tea like she was the guest of honor in a place she still owned. When she saw me, she blinked once. No shock, no gasp, just stillness, like she'd been expecting this all along. I stepped into the room, closed the door behind me, and sat in the chair across from her. The silence stretched too long. She set her cup down and leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, perfectly composed. So, she said, her voice calm, we're doing this now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab that calm right out of her throat and throw it across the room. But I didn't. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I had prepared. Not just the email printouts or the bank charges or even the hotel booking records. No, this was something different. It was a single photo. One that Callie had given me the night before, when she finally cracked and told me there was more I hadn't seen. It was taken at a wedding 6 months ago, a wedding I wasn't invited to because it was too last minute and mostly Marla's coworkers. In the photo, Marla stood with Lyle, his arm around her waist, her head tilted into his shoulder, and a ring on her right hand that wasn't there before. Matching bands. Silver. Minimalist. Couples rings. Marla stared at the photo without touching it. For a long time, she didn't say anything. Then she let out a single, tired breath, like she was finally dropping a weight she had carried for months. I told him I'd tell you, she said. I just didn't know when. That's a lie, Callie said sharply from the corner. Her voice was different, not angry, but disappointed. Deeply, personally. You weren't going to tell him anything. You were just going to disappear. Marla's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. He wasn't supposed to find that photo. I nodded. I wasn't supposed to find the notebook either, or the receipt in your coat pocket, or the spare phone in the kitchen drawer. Her mask cracked then, just a flicker. The tiniest pull at the edge of her mouth. But it was enough. Enough for me to see the guilt she'd tried to bury under elegance and control. You replaced me, I said, not yelling, not accusing, just stating it like a fact. Not because I failed you, but because you were done pretending to need someone like me. She didn't deny it, didn't defend it. She just stared, then finally whispered, I wanted to live a bigger life. I stood. That was all I needed. Callie didn't say another word. Marla didn't follow. I walked out of that apartment into the fading sunlight of late afternoon, and for the first time since the dinner, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a man who'd finally stepped out of someone else's illusion. And yet, I still had one final card to play, because Lyle Dorn wasn't who he claimed to be. And what I discovered about him was going to destroy more than just my marriage. I wasn't planning on finding anything else. I thought the photo was it, the knife that had already twisted the final insult. But I couldn't let it go. Something about Lal Dorn didn't sit right with me. He was too polished, too rehearsed. Everything he said during our meeting felt like it came from a script. And when I went back to the red notebook and looked closer, I noticed something I had missed before. 3 other names, all underlined, with little notes that looked eerily similar to the ones next to his. Names of men. Men who were also finalized. So I did what any emotionally wrecked, humiliated spreadsheet nerd would do. I investigated. It started with a background check. I had a friend, Sam, who owed me a favor from way back when I helped him recover years of lost payroll data. He ran Lal's name through a few legal databases. Lal Dorn wasn't his real name. His real name was Eli Dorison. And Eli had been sued 3 times under non-disclosure agreements related to professional matchmaking consultations that allegedly crossed the line into emotional manipulation and coercion, fancy legal terms for fraudulent affairs. Women hired him, paid him to play a part, and when they felt done, they cut contact, but not before the damage had been done to someone else's life. He wasn't in love with Marla. He was working her. I had everything printed, documented, copied twice. And I mailed it, anonymously, to her parents, to her boss, and to her lawyer. But that wasn't revenge. That was cleanup. Because what I really wanted was to move on. Fully, cleanly, without being tied to the wreckage she left behind. So I did something I'd been too afraid to do for weeks. I packed the last of her things. I dropped them off at Callie's place, no note. No scene. Just closure. Then I booked a solo trip to Oregon. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet place in a forest lodge where no one knew my name, and nobody asked if I was okay. I walked. I read. I cooked meals that weren't for anyone but me. And slowly, painfully, the noise inside my head got quieter. I started sleeping again. I started laughing again. And I started building something new. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't dramatic. But I met someone, a woman named Eliza, who I actually bumped into at a bookstore when I knocked over a stack of used novels trying to reach one on the top shelf. She didn't ask about my past. She just said, "Good taste," and offered me a coffee. She wasn't loud, or flashy, or trying to be anything but herself. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to prove I was worth loving. 6 months later, I got a message from Marla. Just one line. "Are you ever going to talk to me again?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She had said one sentence at dinner that shattered my world. And now, my silence was the final sentence in hers. Because I walked out that night. But I walked into something better. And this time, I'm not looking back.